What if I get you your breakfast and then we'll go barn? You wanna get some breakfast and then go barn? Okay, let's do it. Did you get your ball? Come on. You want me to throw it? Get it. Don't jump on me. Where are you going? I didn't throw it yet. Come on, Pepper! So this is just getting ready. So today the goal is to do a little bit of pull work and try to maintain bend and collection using the inside rein. I'm sorry, using my inside leg to outside rein. That's my focus. And to stay nice and upright and still for me. Not that you can ever actually be totally still while riding, horse throws you around, but to try to keep my body nice and quiet. So that's my goal. This is our grooming process. I think this gets all the itchies. So Secret, he looks like he's backing up and moving forward. I think he's trying to put me where he wants me to itch him. Right now he wants it like up by the ears. He wants me to get behind his ears with the curry comb. It's a little rubber curry, don't worry. But yeah, he moves back and forth depending on what he thinks would feel best. He cute. So this is a little speed through of me setting up a bunch of poles. Really, we just did a square with a little triangle on top, and then I didn't know what to do with these cavalettis, so I set them at an angle at first, and then I realized I couldn't diagonally cross the square, so I was like, oh, never mind, I'll make a one stride. And then I made it very close together, so I dropped it down a little bit so they were more like poles. And then we warmed up for about 10 minutes out in the field, just walking with him all stretched out, and then slowly starting to ask for contact while maintaining forward. He was a little hesitant to come in the ring because he finds it very boring. And I don't think he cares for the footing particularly, but it was pretty good today because it had been rainy the last few days, so it ended up being actually pretty decent footing. So I think as long as you have something to capture his attention, and pole work certainly is one of his more favorite things, I guess I would say. I think he likes to solve problems, like mentally, because pole work and footwork, that's kind of like a math problem to a horse, and he's a very smart horse who is sometimes hard to maintain his attention. So first getting him on task and forward, and then balanced, and then showing him something that he can work on mentally tends to make him more engaged, more interested, a little happier. He works a little harder when he feels challenged. So this is just us warming up. And Pepper helped a lot. So Pepper does not understand, I think. She gets staying out of his way-ish, but I think she gets hot and tired, and so she kind of just ends up in the way. But Secret's kind of a saint about her. So I don't usually have her out with the other horses when people are riding, but for me, it seems to work okay. So this is just warming up with a little bit of walk trot. Just try and get that hind end engaged. He says it was slow going, Mom. Takes me a minute to get loose. And I showed him some poles, and he was like, oh, this could be fun. I'm slightly interested in what you have to say. Just a little more walk trot. And see how his head comes up and he gets real stiff through the back? That's what I'm trying to loosen him up and avoid. Some of it's because he just doesn't want to go forward, but some of it's, I think, just he's not interested. So unfortunately, on the last exercise, the pivot loses us, so you only get to see the right, which is unfortunate because I feel like we did a lot of improving and schooling to the left on the very last exercise. But this is still good to watch. So he takes these big steps over the poles, but the goal is to get him to wait and collect and take a little more careful, like a more careful approach and a little more organized and a little bit more like, hey, if you're not sure, instead of flinging yourself over them, take an extra step and hold yourself together. And all this, I still have a pretty loose rein. I'm just kind of asking for a little bit of bend. So he's starting to get a little more interested in what we're doing. The questions always need to get a little bit more complicated for Secret to get invested. And here you can see he starts to loosen up and get a little more forward. I think he's interested in this question, but here he waits. There we go. So it's not perfect, but there's a little bit more waiting, more thinking. Excuse me being on the wrong diagonal. He's such a good boy for not sweating it. It's a better transition downward. You can hear me praising him because when he comes down, a lot of times what he likes to do is just drop behind your leg and kind of and get stiff through his back. But that time, he, even though his head was a little bit up, he actually felt more like he stayed with me through his hind end and balanced up. So here we're coming through the other way. I'm just asking for that bend. Here we go. And at that time he was like, well, we canter. Which is okay. I mean, I'm just figuring it all out. We haven't done a ton of this kind of work lately. And he does stick his nose out and kind of get a little bit stiff through his back coming through the poles up there, but we just try again and keep asking. What he's doing a really good job of right now is staying out in front of me, which is another... Oh, and this was... He's such a good boy with Pepper. We came straight up and he was a little surprised by the triangles, so he tripped over those a little bit, but we'll try again in a second. But he was starting to anticipate what I was asking, so I just kind of switched the game up a little bit on him. So here, like that's fine. Walk it out. I was trying not to do too much trotting right away because what I really wanted to get to is canter work, so I really wanted to get that walk down, the walk trot transitions, get him out in front of me. And this time he's a little bit more confident. Confident, but maybe a little bit too forward, too out in front of my leg. And the camera lost us a little bit, but thanks to Pepper, it found us again. And I just halted in a straight line. Just get in a little practice for those dressage movements, because one of the first level things you have to do is come in at a trot and go straight to halt. So that's why we keep working the downward transitions. And then here he just is like, nope, I'm gonna run off into the distance. So I was like, we can't approach things that way. So I just kind of tried to keep him up and out in front of me and push him through the turn. There we go. Now he's getting very anticipatory. He's like, I know what we're doing. I don't really need you anymore, Mom. You showed me all the things. And then I was like, wait a second, we're going to go diagonally. And he was like, well, that's different. But he took that one a lot better, actually. Stop. As I'm doing this voiceover, Secret wants to eat wood chips. He's a funny horse. So here we go, down the diagonal again. And you can see he's definitely interested. He's like very obvious when I have his attention. And then I just let him pop into a canter. And the goal being stay in a nice, collected, or at least calm and organized canter. Good. And then what I've been doing when he starts to lean on the right side, or like to the inside on his shoulder, because that's a habit that he's had, and I've unfortunately been really good at keeping him doing it by using indirect rein too much. So now what I try to do when he leans in on his shoulder is just drop him a little bit on the inside, and then use my inside leg to push him into the outside rein. And that balances him up. And we're starting to get into the habit of that. It's becoming like reliable, which is very exciting. So we just come through. I should have probably done that one stride a few more times. But I didn't. Good job, Claire. So now we walk out for a little bit. So I'll just speed that up. And then it so happened that someone called and they cut my pivot off. So I had to set it up again after we finished walking for a few minutes. And there's the ring. So here we are, ready to start working again on the left side. It's the last thing we wanted to do. This does get cut off. You only get to see like a couple minutes of me trotting, and then the pivot loses us. And Pepper, unfortunately, didn't get us back. But what had happened was we went to the left and we went to do that one stride, and it actually turned into a really good exercise because I think I needed to collect him and get a good half halt in on the sides of the circle. So if the square is on one side of the circle and then the one stride poles are on the other, it was a bit of a long one for him, which I didn't realize because he seemed so confident on the right. And he did it so well that I didn't anticipate him having trouble on the left. So we had to do it quite a few times, but eventually what we got pretty reliable with was having a little more horse for that little one stride, and then half halting through the sides and getting him collected and on the outside rein to come through on the square poles on the ground. So right here is where it loses me. It's just too bad. But he does this very well. Such a good boy. And that's all, folks.